When you're trapped in the dark and a hand suddenly reaches out to you, what would you do? I'd grab it and claw my way out of the darkness with every ounce of strength I have. My relationship with my husband seemed like a perfect romance, leading seamlessly to our wedding day. But everything that appeared so smooth and flawless was brutally shattered on our wedding night. Every year, his company would send him abroad for a 6-month exchange program. Before every business trip, I'd cook him a lavish meal. That day was no exception. It was our 3rd wedding anniversary. I'd taken the day off work early, bought loads of his favorite ingredients from the supermarket, and waited eagerly for him to come home. 8 o'clock. It was the time he usually walked through the door, yet there was not a sound outside. I reheated the dishes on the table twice, and the clock chimed 2 more times. Then his text message popped up. Last-minute company arrangement. Flying abroad to liaise on a project. I dialed his number at once, wanting to ask if there was anything he needed that I could bring to the airport. He didn't answer. I swallowed my unease and called again, but this time it was his assistant who picked up, a pretty young woman I'd met once, sharp and ambitious. Sister Juan, brother's gone to buy coffee. What's up? Nothing important. I just wanted to ask if he needs anything. I could drop it off at the airport for him. I clenched my palms unconsciously. They've got everything over there. Don't trouble yourself. She hung up coldly without another word. I stared down at my phone, stunned. Mechanically, I dumped all the food from the table into the trash, then dragged myself to the sofa with my phone in hand. I checked his bank transaction history. There was a purchase at a luxury goods store, 2 necklaces, one costing over 50,000 yuan, the other more than 10,000. In previous years, his flight tickets had always been booked through the company account. This time, however, the payment had come straight out of his personal account. The debit record was still there. Destination, country F, flight landing in 10 hours' time. My long dormant 6th sense suddenly kicked in, like a secret that had been buried for far too long and could no longer be contained. Memories flooded out from the depths of my mind, dragging me back to a past I'd tried so hard to forget. Qin Ji. The name surfaced in my head once again. Without a moment's hesitation, I booked a flight for the same night, arriving only 2 hours after his. I glanced at the email in my phone, which contained every single detail of Zhang Shuping's past. I didn't open it. Instead, I closed my eyes slowly in the airport lounge. We'd been together for 7 years. What does 7 years mean? It's the time it takes for a girl to become a woman. It's the time it takes for a beating heart to turn cold as stone. I was born into a broken family. My birth was meant to save another person's life. But fate had other plans. He died, and I survived. In my parents' eyes, I was a jinx, the one who should have died in their son's place. Eventually, they dumped me in an orphanage. 7 years ago, I met Zhang Shuping in a cafe. It had been pouring with rain that day. I'd just finished a grueling work shift and popped out to buy coffee for my boss. The cafe owner was a friendly sort. We'd always chat a little whenever I visited. Another day slaving away for the boss, huh? I sighed deeply, as if exhaling the words would lighten the weight on my chest. They say rainy days are perfect for chance encounters. Cheer up. The owner patted me on the shoulder, then turned to attend to other customers, as if the heavens were playing a trick on me. A sudden gust of wind swept the umbrella from my hand the moment I stepped out of the cafe with my coffee. I watched helplessly as the umbrella flew 20 meters away. I was stuck. Should I chase after it in the rain, or just make a run for it back to the office? Just then, a gentle yet anxious voice sounded beside me. Be careful, don't run. A second later, an umbrella was held over my head, shielding me from the downpour. I looked up and saw him. He looked about my age, dressed in a white shirt and faded baggy jeans. He had fair skin and long eyelashes that framed a pair of bright, amorous eyes. That was the first time I laid eyes on him, and I fell, without a shadow of a doubt. Who could resist a handsome guy who shelters you from the rain on a stormy day? Just as the cafe owner had said, rainy days are made for romances. 3 months later, we were together. I suppose I was what people would call a love-obsessed fool. After we got together, I quit my job and moved to an apartment close to his. Back then, I thought I'd met the best man in the world. Little did I know, I was only a foot away from hell. 4 years into our relationship, he took me to meet his parents. I sat nervously on the sofa in their modest apartment, twisting my hands together. Across from me sat a well-preserved woman, my boyfriend's mother, and the source of all my nightmares to come. I heard you're an orphan, raised in a welfare home, she asked. I nodded quickly. Yes, Auntie. Where's your hometown? She pressed. City, eh? I replied. My heart raced with anxiety. Was she unhappy with me? Had I done something to offend her? But her final reaction took me completely by surprise. She seemed more than satisfied. So satisfied that I couldn't shake the eerie feeling that I'd walked straight into a wolf's den. For months after meeting his mother, he proposed to me in bed. We were tangled up together, still breathless from lovemaking, the air thick with the scent of our passion. Juan, marry me. I'll spend the rest of my life making you happy. I looked into his eyes, my nose stinging with tears. I nodded without a moment's hesitation. There was no engagement ring, no witnesses to the proposal, but I was desperate to entrust my future to him. I just wanted a home, a place that truly belonged to me. 4 months later, we got married. It was a simple wedding, with only a handful of guests. On that day, I thought I was the happiest woman alive because from that moment on, I finally had a home to call my own. That night, he drank a lot. He held me tight and told me how happy he was, rambling about our past and our future together. He cupped my face in his hands, gazing at me with a fake sobriety. Do you know, the first time I saw you, I knew you'd be my wife someday. I told myself I had to work hard, earn enough money to marry you, and I did it. I bit my lip to hold back my tears, my voice trembling. You did. But I never could have imagined that on our wedding night, he'd call out another person's name in his sleep. Kinji, I love you. The unfamiliar name hung in the air. I froze, the smile fading from my face inch by inch. I pulled my hand away from his and watched as he closed his eyes, a faint smile lingering on his lips. That smile made my desperate attempt to stay calm look utterly ridiculous. Kinji, the name was so similar to mine. I'm Kin Huan. I'd spent my whole life chasing a moment of happiness. But from that night onward, joy would never grace my life again. Kinji's name became a thorn, embedded deeply in my heart on my wedding night. I was desperate to find out who she was, but it hit me suddenly how little I actually knew about him. I only knew the version of him that existed after we met. Before that, his past was a complete blank to me. I didn't even know his friends, let alone his colleagues. I thought we knew each other inside out. I thought he'd be my rock for the rest of my life. But in the end, I realized I was the only one who'd been taking this charade seriously. No one knew how badly I'd craved a home of my own, so badly that I'd begun to gaslight myself, telling over and over that Kinji was just his past. And eventually, I'd managed to bury that night's memory deep down in my heart. But I never could have guessed that 3 years later, he was still clinging to that woman. The plane touched down in country F at 3 o'clock in the morning. I received a text from Jiang Shuping. Wife, landed safe and sound. Just settling in. Wait for me to come home. It was as if he'd completely forgotten our anniversary, as if he still thought I was sitting at home, waiting for him like a fool. I'd expected to be too anxious to sleep on the flight, but instead, I'd slept like a baby, even having sweet dreams. I checked his bank transactions again. He'd booked a room at one of the most famous hotels in the city, right next to a popular tourist attraction. I remembered seeing pictures of this place online once, and mentioning to him that I'd love to visit someday. To see this country that oozed romance from every pore, to wander through the orange flower fields, the endless sunflower plains, the crystal blue sky, and the pink flamingos. He'd ruffled my hair affectionately back then and said, if you give me a baby this year, I'll take you traveling here. But my stomach had always let me down. 3 years of marriage, and not even a hint of pregnancy. I'd wanted to go to the hospital to get checked out, but he'd stopped me every time, saying, if we're meant to have a child, it'll happen when the time is right. I booked a room at the same hotel using my own credit card. In that moment, I was grateful I hadn't listened to him and quit my job to become a full-time housewife. Otherwise, I'd be here catching him cheating with his money. Once I got to my hotel room, I collapsed onto the bed, exhausted. Then I turned on the hotel computer and opened my emails. One was from the hospital, the other from the private detective I'd hired. I hadn't expected the hospital results to come through so quickly. I'd barely stepped off the plane when the doctor's text arrived. Miss Kin, your test results are in your email. If possible, I'd recommend you come to the hospital for immediate admission and treatment. I read the text but paid it no mind. I'd always been in good health, surely nothing serious could be wrong. But when I opened the email, I froze. I couldn't make sense of the long, jargon-filled medical explanation, but 6 words jumped out at me. Crystal clear. Nephrotic syndrome. A disease that made it extremely difficult to have children. No wonder I'd never gotten pregnant all these years. No wonder I'd been feeling under the weather every now and then. But I refused to believe it. I'd had a regular checkup just 3 months prior, accompanied by him, and the results had come back completely normal. Unconvinced, I shot a message to Dr. Lee. Dr. Lee, is there a mistake with the test results? I had a full physical 3 months ago, and everything was fine. I'd looked up the condition. Nephrotic syndrome doesn't develop overnight. I was certain Dr. Lee had mixed up my report with someone else's. Dr. Lee replied almost immediately, even attaching a photo of my test results. Miss Kim, this is definitely your report. Your symptoms are already quite obvious, and I strongly advise you to be admitted as soon as possible. As for your previous normal checkup, may I ask which hospital you had it done at? I sent him the name of the hospital. For a long time, my phone remained silent. Just as I was reeling from the news, my phone suddenly rang. I grabbed it in a panic. It was Dr. Lee. Miss Kim, the hospital where you had your checkup employs a classmate of mine. I asked him to pull up your medical records. It turns out your kidney problems were already detected 3 years ago. Did you really have no idea? 3 years ago, I whispered, my voice trembling. That had been our premarital checkup. If he loved me, why would he hide something like this from me? Why keep it a secret for 3 whole years? I didn't dare to think if I hadn't found out now, would he have continued lying to me until I died? Miss Kim, are you still there? Dr. Lee's voice was laced with urgency. Given your current condition, you need to start treatment right away. I hope you can come to the hospital today. I'm sorry, but I can't right now. I hung up the phone and stared at the test results on the computer screen. My hands balled into fists. My phone kept buzzing with text messages from Dr. Lee. After a while, he seemed to give up, and finally, it went quiet. They say misfortune never comes alone, and in that moment, I felt it more acutely than ever before. Luckily, I had a habit of taking photos of all my medical reports and saving them on my phone. I scrolled through my gallery and found all the checkup results from the past few years. Same hospital, different results, different handwriting. I slapped myself hard across the face, forcing myself to stay awake, to stay alert. I couldn't fathom why he hated me so much that he'd let me suffer from such a serious illness without telling me a thing. But logic told me this was no time to wallow in tears. A hotel room that cost thousands of US dollars a night wasn't a place to mourn over a cheating scumbag. I wiped my eyes and opened the other email, the one from the detective. It contained every detail about Zhang Shuping, his company, his department, his position, even the contact information of his colleagues and superiors. But none of that gave me the fleeting sense of satisfaction I'd craved, because it wasn't what I was looking for. I kept scrolling down and finally, I found it. His Kinji, the woman he'd moaned in his sleep about on our wedding night. It turned out that from the day we met until now, they'd never stopped seeing each other. And it wasn't just casual contact. Zhang Shuping had even bought her an apartment. Even after we got married, their affair had continued unabated. The email wasn't just text, it included photos of their trips together, of all the places they'd been. I stared at the photos and laughed out loud. It was almost comical how little effort they'd put into hiding their relationship from me. Some of the photos posted online had Zhang Shuping's face only partially blurred. Anyone who knew him would recognize him instantly. The internet never forgets. The private detective had dug up everything: hotel booking records, surveillance footage, flight tickets, travel itineraries, mountains of evidence proving their infidelity. And then there was something I'd never expected to find. Kinji was sick. Leukemia. To me, it was nothing less than karma, a fitting punishment for destroying someone else's marriage. But then, a memory I'd buried deep down resurfaced, hitting me like a ton of bricks. I knew that illness all too well. I'd been born into this world because of it. My birth was meant to save my older brother's life, though in the end, we'd lost him anyway. I must have fallen asleep at the desk, because the next thing I knew, my phone was ringing again. I glanced at the screen. It was a text from Dr. Lee, listing the names of some medications I could take. I replied with a quick thank you. After composing myself, I turned my attention to the more important task at hand. I remembered reading an article online once. What would you do if you found out your husband was cheating? The top answer had been, pretend you don't know, keep spending his money, and gather evidence for a divorce settlement. At the time, I'd scoffed at the idea. Going to all that trouble just to get a divorce, hadn't all those years of marriage meant anything at all? But now, here I was, calling a lawyer and scrambling to collect evidence against him. There are far worse fates than death, watching everything you hold dear crumble into dust right before your eyes. For instance, I wasn't in a hurry. Unlike Kinji, I still had a long life ahead of me. At the very least, I'd make sure I stayed alive long enough to outlive her. The private detective hadn't expected me to come all the way to Country F in person. He gave me an address, the home of a friend of his. He's the kind of person who can be a lifesaver in times of need, he'd said. He'd used that phrase, lifesaver. Maybe he thought I was a poor, pitiful woman, but I didn't see myself that way. If anything, I was grateful that I'd seen the true face of the men sleeping next to me before I died. I made my way to the address. A chaotic street filled with people of all walks of life, their eyes lingering on me curiously as I passed by. I found him on the second floor of a run-down apartment building. He was wearing a white shirt and beach shorts, his clear, bright eyes making me pause for a moment. I hadn't expected to meet another Chinese person here. He invited me inside. The apartment was spotlessly clean, a stark contrast to the noisy, messy street outside. It was hard to believe such a peaceful oasis existed in this chaos. Along told me everything, he said, cutting straight to the chase. What do you plan to do now? I don't know. I shook my head. Besides gathering evidence, I felt utterly helpless. You're a strange woman, he said, a faint chuckle escaping his lips. He turned and fetched a bottle of wine from the shelf, handing it to me. I've taken on plenty of cases involving cheating husbands. Most of the wives want me to stage an accident and get rid of the men quietly. You're the first one who's ever said I don't know. I smiled faintly. There are far more painful things in this world than death. Like what? Ruining someone's reputation, tearing their family apart, watching them lose everything they have, turning them against the people they love, leaving them with nothing. Isn't that enough to drive anyone to despair? I quirked an eyebrow, amused by the look of shock that crossed his face. It was clear I'd caught him off guard. He'd underestimated just how far a scorned woman was willing to go to get revenge. Interesting. Though I should warn you, I don't come cheap. You do know that, right? I do. Along had already told me his rates before I came. I'll pay you double, I said. I want you to dig up everything there is to know about that woman, Kinji. He nodded, agreeing without hesitation. I don't think I caught your name, I said, studying him. ZCI. It's a lovely name. After that meeting, he vanished without a trace, like he'd never existed at all. I holed up in my hotel room, too afraid to run into Zhang Shuping and Qin Ji before I had all the evidence I needed. It was ridiculous, wasn't it? They were the ones who'd done something wrong, yet I was the one hiding like a rat, too cowardly to face them. I never expected that the first person to track me down wouldn't be ZCI but Zhang Shuping. I'd ordered room service as usual and was waiting for the delivery when my phone rang. It was him. His voice was the same as always, warm and familiar, but beneath the surface, I could hear the restrained anger simmering. Mom said you haven't been home these past few days. Where are you? I laughed silently to myself. Every time he went on a business trip, his mother would come to keep me company, shadowing my every move like a ghost. I'd complained to him about it before, feeling uneasy, but he'd always brushed it off with a few words. She's just worried about you, that's all, he'd say. Now I finally understood. It had all been a scheme, a way to keep tabs on me, to make sure I didn't discover their little secret. I've been feeling a bit down, I said calmly. Just needed to get away for a while. I didn't bother making up an excuse about work, because I knew he would have called my colleagues to check before dialing me. He'd always been a control freak. Once, I'd mistaken that controlling streak for love. Now I realized it was nothing more than a predator keeping a close eye on his prey. Why didn't you tell me you were going away? His voice softened considerably. My work abroad is going to take a while. Take good care of yourself at home, and wait for me to come back. This time, I didn't obey him. Instead, I said abruptly, Shuping, where are you? I want to come to you. I've booked a flight to Country F. Send me your work address, I'll come find you as soon as I land. I didn't wait for Zhang Shuping's reply, cutting him off with a reason he couldn't refuse. I'd known he would try to turn me down, so I'd already prepared an argument he couldn't argue against. I'm swamped with work here. Even if you came, I wouldn't have time to look after you. Be good. Wife, wait for me at home. Shuping, have you forgotten our 3rd anniversary? My sudden question threw him completely off guard. I haven't been feeling well lately. I was hoping you'd come home soon and take me to the hospital for a checkup, just as I'd expected. Zhang Shuping panicked. He hesitated for a second, then rushed to say, I've been so busy these days, I couldn't even stay home to celebrate our anniversary with you. I'll send you the address, call me when you land, and I'll pick you up. Having gotten what I wanted, I forced myself to exchange a few more sickeningly sweet words with him before hanging up. I looked at the address he'd sent. It wasn't the fancy hotel he was staying at, but a shoddy, no-name one. It seemed that in his eyes, I was only worthy of a cheap, rundown room. The next day, I timed it perfectly and headed to the airport early to wait for him. Meanwhile, ZCI finally got in touch, sending me all the information he dug up on Kinji. I didn't even have time to look at it when I saw Zhang Shuping hurrying toward me, phone clutched tightly in his hand, a flustered look on his face. I didn't even have a chance to plaster on my fake smile before he snatched my suitcase from my hand, hung up his phone with the other, and didn't spare me a single glance. I still have work to take care of. You stay at my place first, I'll come back to keep you company tonight. I nodded, looping my arm through his and climbing into the car. Honey, do you remember I told you once how much I wanted to visit this country? Zhang Shuping nodded distractedly. Yeah, I remember. I never thought my dream would actually come true. I let myself get lost in the illusion of happiness alone. The car sped along. He seemed in an awful hurry to get somewhere else, his mind clearly not on me at all. I sat there silently, slipping the bug I'd hidden behind my ear and tucking it under the seat. I'd thought this part would be tricky, but it turned out Zhang Shuping didn't even bother to look at me twice. I'd accomplished my mission effortlessly, then watched him drive off to meet his other woman. When we arrived at the hotel, his assistant was already waiting there, looking thoroughly impatient. She didn't even bother to pretend to be polite, tossing me the room key and walking away without a word. I glanced at her, not caring in the slightest, because I was going to send every single one of them straight to hell. Once I was inside the room, I pulled out my spare phone and opened ZC's message. I froze instantly, a cold chill spreading through my body like I'd been submerged in ice water. I saw a name that had haunted me like a nightmare for years. Qin Chong, my birth mother, a woman who'd given birth to me but never raised me. She didn't deserve to be called a mother. I never could have imagined that Qin Ji was her daughter, my half-sister, sharing the same mother but different fathers. Isn't it ridiculous? My sister, whom I'd never even met, had stolen my husband. Or wait, maybe I was the intruder all along. Maybe my unknown sister was actually my husband's first love. In that moment, I suddenly remembered she had leukemia. The fog in my mind lifted, and everything clicked into place. No wonder Zhang Shuping had hidden my illness from me all these years. No wonder he'd married me. It all made sense now. Every bit of it had been a carefully crafted scheme. My phone buzzed twice more. ZCI must have been getting impatient, texting me to ask what we should do next. I thought for a moment, then typed back a reply. Find out where they are right now. I wanted to see Kinji. I wanted to lay eyes on this half-sister I'd never known. Soon enough, ZCI picked me up from the hotel and drove me to the address. We arrived at a flower field, a place I'd once dreamed of visiting. But now, I was standing here watching my husband sit there with another woman. I let out a soft laugh, not a trace of sadness or anger on my face. What are you laughing at? ZCI asked, looking confused. Look how perfect they look together, I said. ZCI stared at me in disbelief. You're the first woman I've ever met who can sit here calmly watching her husband cheat on her. Then watch closely, I said. Watch how I send them both to hell. I pulled out my phone and tuned into a channel. It was the recording from the bug ID planted in the car. Sure enough, right after picking me up, Zhang Shuping had gone back to fetch Kinji. Kinji's voice drifted out of the speaker, soft and syrupy sweet, the kind of voice that made her sound like a gentle, beautiful girl. But her words were sharp and venomous. Zhang Shuping, how did that woman find her way here? She couldn't have found out about us, could she? Don't be silly. She's just here for our anniversary. Aren't you going to tell her the truth soon? The truth? I frowned. Was there something else he was hiding from me? David said you'll be able to have the surgery soon. It is actually good timing that she is here. We won't have to go through the trouble of tricking her into coming. Once she donates her bone marrow to you, you'll be as good as new. And then we can get married. Hey, Emph. I laughed, adjusting my seat to get comfortable and closing my eyes. Their conversation sounded like a lullaby to me. You're really something else, ZC's voice said beside me. They've plotted against you like this, and you're still just sitting here waiting for the right moment. I opened my eyes slowly. Patience. I'm waiting for an opportunity, and that opportunity came sooner than I expected. I'd heard him complain before his company was planning to promote him, but he had a troublesome rival standing in his way. He'd ranted about the guy to his colleagues on the phone more than once. Over time, I'd memorized the man's name. I looked at ZCI. I need you to dig up information on one more person. Then send him an email and make sure you hide your IP address. ZCI didn't even bat an eye this time. If anything, he looked a little excited, eager to see what I had planned next. That night, Zhang Shuping came back to the hotel to stay with me, something I hadn't expected at all. He reeked of alcohol, and beneath it, I caught a whiff of that familiar Gucci perfume. He pulled me into his arms the second he walked in, whispering sweet nothings in my ear. Wife, I'm so glad you came here to be with me. I thought you might not want me to, I said, pushing him away gently and handing him a glass of warm water I'd prepared earlier. You've been drinking so much. Another work dinner? He nodded, pulling me back into his arms. He leaned in, blowing warm air against my ear, and his other hand started fumbling with the buttons of my shirt. I dodged his advances subtly, pressing the glass of water to his lips. No matter how busy work gets, you have to take care of yourself. I watched him drain the glass, gazing at him with a soft, tender smile. Shuping, do you love me? Zhang Shuping froze for a second. Why are you asking me that all of a sudden? You keep saying I can't get pregnant, I said, taking his hand in mine. My fingers were ice cold. Do you think there's something wrong with me? His face paled instantly. Don't be silly. Having a baby isn't something you can rush. It'll happen when the time is right. I ignored him, rambling on as if I hadn't heard a word he said. You're so amazing. I am sure there are plenty of girls at the company who have a crush on you. We've been married for so long, and I still haven't given you a child. I feel like I'm holding you back. Let's not talk about this anymore. Zhang Shuping hugged me suddenly, and I saw a flicker of suppressed anger in his eyes. Don't overthink it. It's fine if we never have kids. I smiled to myself. Fine if we never have kids? He was probably terrified that if I got pregnant, I wouldn't be able to donate my bone marrow to Kinji. It wasn't long before he fell into a deep sleep. I patted his cheek, no response. Only then did I feel safe enough to take his phone from his pocket. He'd never imagined I'd check his phone, I suppose. I'd trusted him so blindly that he thought I'd never suspect a thing. So he hadn't bothered to delete any of his chat history or transaction records with Kinji. I pulled out my spare phone and took photos of everything. I scrolled through his messages, watching him grovel and fawn over Kinji, showering her with gifts and affection. Baby, today's our 7th anniversary together. Wait for me, I'm coming to spend it with you. Baby, do you like the necklace I bought you? I saw the photo Kinji had sent him in reply. That necklace, it was the one I'd seen in his bank records. The one that cost over 50,000 yuan. And the other one, the 10,000 yuan one. It was hanging around his assistant's neck. I sat at the desk, lost in thought for a long time. The only expensive thing he'd ever bought me was a high-quality dishwasher. He'd even skipped buying me a wedding ring, claiming he was too busy with work to make up for it later. I read through their messages, watching them plan every detail, waiting for the perfect moment to trick me into donating my bone marrow to Kinji. I saw Zhang Shuping's message. We need to get her to donate before she finds out about her kidney disease. Otherwise, she'll never agree to it. So he'd known all along. I let out a bitter laugh. 28 years ago, 2 people had gone to great lengths to have me. But when they realized I was of no use to them, they'd cruelly dumped me in an orphanage. 28 years later, history was repeating itself. It seemed my existence was only meant to save someone else's life. Their actions made me feel like living was the biggest mistake I'd ever made, that I should never have been born, never have opened my eyes to this world. Just then, my phone rang. It was ZCI. I was grateful for him. He'd pulled me back from the brink of hell. I glanced at Zhang Shuping as I stepped out of the room to answer the call. He was still sound asleep, a content smile on his face, no doubt dreaming of Kinji. I sent the email to that guy like you asked, ZCI said. I even hacked into his company forum account while I was at it. Want to do something fun? I laughed. Not yet. The time isn't right. I was still waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Tomorrow, come with me somewhere, I said. I knew Zhang Shuping wouldn't stay with me, which was fine. It meant I could go about my business undisturbed. I took photos of everything on his phone, uploading them to a cloud drive for safekeeping. Once I was done, I climbed into ZC's car. Where are we going? He asked. The biggest mall in the city. ZCI stared at me in surprise, a hint of confusion in his voice. You're really in the mood for shopping right now? I smiled at his teasing tone. Now that I've met my dear little sister, how could I not buy her a few gifts? I bought a bottle of the perfume Zhang Shuping loved, plus several limited edition handbags. As I watched the money drain from my bank account, I'd never felt more liberated in my life. We went back to ZC's place. He collapsed onto the sofa, exhausted, and stared at the pile of luxury goods, asking what I planned to do with them. I pulled one of the perfume bottles out of the bag and handed it to him. Give this to Kinji. Pretend to be a mysterious wealthy suitor. You don't need to reveal your identity, just drop a few hints. ZCI understood instantly, but quickly shook his head. That plan is way too cheesy. Do you really think he'll fall for it? I know Jiang Shuping better than anyone, I said. He's petty and paranoid. He does everything for a reason, always weighing the cost and benefit. Imagine how crazy he'll go when he finds out that after spending so much money and effort on Kinji, she's still pining for someone else. And sure enough, my plan worked like a charm. That very night, Jiang Shuping came home looking like thunder. I could feel the suppressed rage radiating off him, along with that familiar scent of perfume. He'd been to see Kinji, and their meeting hadn't gone well at all. I'd never expected this little trick to tear them apart completely. I knew Kinji was too cunning to let Jiang Shuping slip away at a time like this when she needed his help so badly. You look terrible, I said, feigning concern. Is something wrong? Did you run into trouble at work? Jiang Shuping glanced at me, realizing his expression was giving him away. He pulled me into a gentle hug, leaning in to whisper in my ear, his voice dripping with fake affection. Nothing's wrong, just a little tired from work. Wife, I thought about you all day. I laughed, pushing him away and handing him another glass of water. As I stepped outside, my phone buzzed. It was a message from ZCI. Things had gone even smoother than we'd anticipated. He'd barely dropped a few hints, and Kinji had thrown herself at him like a lovesick snake. We played along, letting Kinji believe that a wealthy tycoon had fallen head over heels for her. The money in my bank account didn't last long during my stay abroad. I had no choice but to dip into the savings my adoptive father had left me. I used every last cent of my father as hard-earned money to buy more luxury gifts for Kinji. She ate it all up, and before long, she'd started to give Jiang Shuping the cold shoulder. I knew Kinji's feelings for Jiang Shuping had long since turned into an obsession. After guarding her for so many years, there was no way he'd let her go without a fight. Once he'd calmed down, Jiang Shuping began showering Kinji with even more lavish gifts and attention. I watched from the sidelines, cold and detached, like a stranger observing a play. It wasn't long before he ran out of money. I'd seen it coming. He was just a lowly purchasing manager, with a family to support and 2 women to keep happy on the side. How much savings could he possibly have had? That day, I told him I wanted to go back to China. He prepared an elaborate candlelit dinner to convince me to stay. After a few glasses of wine, he took my hand in his eyes brimming with fake tenderness. Wife, sell the house you own in the southern part of the city. We can use the money to buy a bigger, nicer one together. I knew he was lying through his teeth, but I agreed anyway. Sure, but I need to go back to China first to handle the paperwork. He hadn't expected me to agree so easily. Before I left, he took me shopping, buying me loads of handbags and cosmetics. I accepted every single gift without hesitation. I met ZCI one last time before I left. You're leaving before we finish what we started? He asked, a hint of reluctance in his eyes. It'll all be over soon. It's time for me to go home. I paid him the remaining balance of his fee and gave him one final task. ZCI did an excellent job, even better than I'd hoped. A month after I returned to China, I received an email from him. Jiang Shuping's greed had finally outstripped his means. He'd embezzled 5 million yuan of company funds. 5 million yuan. I checked with my lawyer. Embezzlement of that amount carried a prison sentence of at least 3 years, up to 10. In severe cases, it could even mean 10 years or more, or life imprisonment. But that wasn't enough. I waited for more. Then came the call from Jiang Shuping, urging me to sell the house quickly. I told him I was in the process, that the paperwork was taking time, and that it would be done by the end of the month. He believed me, and his embezzlement spiraled further out of control. Today was my birthday. I sat by the river, watching the crowds pass by. My phone kept ringing, so I turned it off and threw it into the river. My spare phone flickered to life a few times, then went silent. I pulled it out and checked the message. It was a congratulations from ZCI. I smiled, but didn't reply. I'd given Jiang Shuping's rival the perfect gift. Right as Jiang Shuping boarded the plane, ready to fly me back to country F for the bone marrow transplant, a post exploded on the company forum. It exposed every last detail of his affair, including explicit chat logs and proof of his embezzlement. Everything was laid bare for the whole world to see. Jiang Shuping would probably spend the rest of his life in prison, wondering how his perfect scheme had unraveled so completely. His assistant had fled the country, but I knew better than anyone turning yourself in was always a better option than running away. After everything happened, I went to see his mother, the cruel, selfish woman who'd helped him play his part in the charade all these years. I told her everything about Jiang Shuping. Our house was sealed off by the court. His mother, overwhelmed by the shock, lost her mind. She wandered out of the house alone one day and was hit by a car and killed. I thought it was karma. I didn't shed a single tear when she died. I handled her funeral arrangements alone, then booked a flight back to Country F. I went to see my half-sister. She was beautiful. We had the same eyes, the same eyebrows. In that moment, I finally understood why Zhang Shuping had fallen for me all those years ago. Why he'd gone out of his way to buy coffee at that cafe so far from his company. It had all been because of Kinji. I was nothing more than a substitute. The 7-year deception came crashing down, finally and completely. Kinji knelt at my feet, begging me to save her life. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. A dying woman begging another dying woman to save her. Isn't it hilarious? I shook her off, my voice cold and sharp. I'd rather die than save you. Give up. At the end of the story, I closed my eyes slowly. In my dream, I had parents who loved me, a husband who cherished me, and children who called me mother. It was so beautiful that I never wanted to wake up.